This podcast is sponsored by ebookit.com, self-publishing solutions for the independent author and small press. Visit us today at ebookit.com.
Welcome to the Toastmasters Podcast, the official podcast of Toastmasters International. Hello, everybody. This is Greg Gazin. Since 1959, Toastmasters' most prestigious award, the Golden Gavel, has been presented annually in August at the Toastmasters International Convention to an individual distinguished in the fields of communication and leadership. This illustrious list of Golden Gavel honorees include Dr. Joyce Brothers, Walter Cronkite, Stephen Covey, Tony Robbins, Debbie Fields Rose, Julian Treasure, Zig Ziglar, and others. And this year, we had the honor of speaking with the 2024 recipient, Lisa Sun. Lisa is an entrepreneur, speaker, and author. She founded her company Gravitas in 2012 with a mission to catalyze confidence. The company's origin story dates back to her first professional review, where she was told that she lacked gravitas and should go buy a new dress, big jewelry, and great shoes. With those words in mind, Sun filed for a global patent to build shapewear directly into dresses. 2 months after launch, her collection was featured in O, the Oprah Magazine, People, and on Today, all in the same month. Lisa is also the national best-selling author of Gravitas, The 8 Strengths That Redefine Confidence, that was number 1 in September on USA Today's bestseller list and number 1 on Amazon as well. Prior to founding Gravitas, Sun spent 11 years as a management consultant at McKinsey & Company. Lisa is also featured in the cover story of the May 2024 issue of the Toastmaster magazine entitled Lisa Sun Redefines Confidence. The 2024 Golden Gavel recipient has gone from lacking gravitas to owning it. Coming to us today from the Big Apple, New York City, Lisa Sun, welcome to the Toastmasters Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Greg. I'm really honored to be with you.
Well, Lisa, first of all, congratulations on being this year's Golden Gavel Award recipient. And truly, it's an honor and a pleasure to speak with you today.
Thank you.
Now, in the opening, there was one word that I repeated a number of times. It's in your bio. It's the title of your article, your book, the name of your company, Gravitas. To kick things off, Lisa, can you please share with us what that word means? And perhaps could you elaborate on that pivotal moment that brought you to today?
Let's step back for a second. I think gravitas has historically been a coded word, right? You can actually place whatever assumptions you want onto that word. If you look it up in the dictionary, it's dignity, importance, depth of substance. And I think when you think about that, that is such a subjective concept, right? If you think about who gets labeled as confident, how do we define confidence? And so my first exposure to the word, I was at McKinsey & Company. I was a business analyst. And in my first annual review, I was told I didn't have any gravitas. And I think the important learning in that moment was I actually had the strength of courage to say, hey, what is that? And how do you get it? And over the last 24 years, really have been on a journey to try to discover what it means. And I think at every 5 to 10 years, it actually takes on a new meaning. So when I was 22 years old, it was my boss telling me, hey, go buy a new dress and look in the mirror and like yourself. And I thought that's a very odd piece of feedback to give to someone making $43,000 a year in 2000, size 18-20, to go buy new clothes. And she said, look, when you get up in the morning, you're the first person you have to look at in the mirror and you have to like yourself. And I can teach you how to be good at this job, but I can't teach you how to like yourself. Dumbo did not need a feather to fly. It just reminded him that he could. And so what her real message was, you can fake it to make it. You can performatively be confident. You can be assertive and aggressive. But really, if you're deeply insecure and highly overachieving on the inside, can you truly ever be confident? Can you ever truly have gravitas? When I think about that word in its first iteration, over 2 decades later, it's taken on a much deeper meaning. And for us, the work that we do now, not only as a fashion brand, but also as a content and media platform, is really about helping people understand that gravitas is a total approach to living life with self-insurance. And more importantly, the underpinnings of confidence or self-belief is a choice and a mindset before it becomes a behavior. And I know we're going to dig into that quite a bit, but when you think about that word gravitas, it has been framed mostly by masculine traits, assertiveness, aggressive behavior, and extroversion and charisma. If you look up the word confidence in the dictionary or gravitas, it has nothing to do with bravado or swagger. It's an
Mm.
understanding and appreciation of your own talents and abilities. And so I think my mission is to help people redefine what gravitas is, what confidence is, in a way that gives everyone permission to have it. The best example of this is in 2013, when Janet Yellen was nominated to be the first woman head of the Federal Reserve. There were hundreds of articles that she did not have the gravitas to lead the Fed. And Ezra Klein at the Washington Post called out the naysayers. He said it's because the pervasive view of gravitas does not stretch to include her. In fact, she's soft-spoken, collaborative, empathetic, the most qualified for the job. Why do we only label extroversion and charisma as gravitas? Katie Couric was told she didn't have the gravitas to lead the evening news. And in 2020, she said, it's because I didn't have testicles. Your opening question, I think, is a very complex one because gravitas, I think, has taken on many iterations. And right now, I think we're in a position where we can reset and redefine it in an inclusive and empowering way.
That's wonderful. To play on the cliche, when life gives you lemons, you make lemonade, as this timeless metaphor. It sounds that not only did you make lemonade, but you redefined the citrus category, obviously successful. I am curious, although you did turn things around in that moment, in that professional interview. I'm just curious, how were you actually feeling in that moment? And what were you thinking as you left that meeting?
Well, I think anybody who's been told that they need to be more confident, everyone spirals, especially at the age of 23. Unfortunately, that phrase of you need gravitas or you need to be more confident, I think it's anxiety inducing. It's ambiguous. In fact, one of the reasons I wrote my book is to help people through those moments. There's not one of us that hasn't faced insecurity and fear and also been told to be more confident. Again, that word is so coded, and that word can really make you spiral. That's why our mission as a company is we catalyze confidence.
I feel the same way. If I would have been told that, and I have been told that, I would have taken a spiral down, and I'm not sure if I would have been able to recover at that time. I'm just wondering, you just mentioned catalyze confidence. Could you tell us a little bit more about Gravitas and a little bit more about your mission, please?
Of course. One of the things that we always say is we're not a fashion company, we're a company on a mission to catalyze confidence. For 11 years while I was at McKinsey and Company, I was one of the leaders of the global fashion and luxury practice. My mom convinced me to take my life savings after over a decade of being in corporate America and start my own business. So I started my own company in 2013 because I saw a real gap in the marketplace around redefining fashion in a way that really helped people feel like the best versions of themselves. It wasn't about trend or are you wearing the right thing? It was really about starting from the woman back. And what I mean by that is every woman hates herself in the dressing room. Every woman thinks her body is flawed in some way. And so when we start with that as a premise, I thought there was an opportunity to change how women felt about the dressing room so that they could see the best in themselves. They could really know that a company understood every single body issue that you might have and design around you versus you fitting to the clothes. We design clothes that finally fit you. And when we launched in September of 2013, first of all, we're size inclusive, so size 0 to 28W without a plus size or a straight size designation. We were for every body type. So we actually worked with multiple fit models so that at least one dress in the collection would work for you. And we decided to sprinkle inspiration, content, and motivation throughout it. And when we launched in September 2013, within 6 weeks of launching the company, Oprah gave us 2 pages in her favorite things issue. We had a full page in People Magazine. I did Ambush Makeover on the Today Show. And you sell out in a day when that happens. But what I always tell people, it wasn't that moment. It was actually a couple months later, we started to get hundreds of emails and letters and voicemails. And it was all about these women who wanted to tell us their story, whether it was a judge in LA who sold her house and ran to be the youngest woman judge in LA Superior Court. She sent us a video of her sons putting her judge's robes over her Gravitas dress. A flight attendant, Joanna, lost her job, bought a dress to go to her mom's funeral and to also interview for a new job as well. And what I realized was through our products, we were helping people make a choice to believe in themselves. And we were giving them essentially Dumbo's flying feather to remind them of how capable they were. And so the company started as a fashion business, but over the last 5 years has really evolved more into fashion, content, inspiration, motivation. Whether or not you buy a piece of clothing for us, we want to be able to give people an access point to seeing the best in themselves.
Wow. That leads us nicely into your book, Gravitas, the 8 Strengths That Redefine Confidence. Could you please share maybe your insights on the significance of confidence, especially in the context of your book?
Sure. I think there are really 3 primary insights. The first is we're born fully self-confident. I mean, Greg, you don't have to have kids, but have you ever been around a 5-year-old?
Yes, they're fearless.
Yeah, okay. So we are born fully self-confident. Ask any 5-year-old what they're the best at in the world, and they'll tell you right away, I'm the best at soccer, I'm the best at hugs, I'm the best at everything. Because at that age, we have not learned how to compare, despair. We haven't experienced setbacks and disappointments. And the second thing we've learned is that between the ages of 8 and 12, there are 6 forces that show up in our lives. If you think, go back to adolescence, go back to middle school, we found that there are 6 forces that show up and they form the basis of an inner critic that turns us from being self-confident to being self-aware. And then that self-awareness easily becomes self-doubt. And when we have self-doubt, all of a sudden we start to see our flaws. We start to not think highly of ourselves and we become less courageous. We default to our comfort zones. And so those first 2 fundamental insights form the basis of a lot of our work. And for women in your audience and men who are listening, you're welcome. You're about to understand every woman you know. I meet women in a dressing room and they bring all of their negativity, their entire inner critic to that experience. And so my job is the third part of the work we do, which is my job is to help them make a choice to break out of that mindset, change that mindset, and build a strengths-based approach to thinking about themselves, so much so that they can behave and act differently, that they can take risks, that they can be more courageous, more connected and compassionate. So really the foundation of our work is these 3 sections, right? We're born fully self-confident. There are 6 forces that hold us back from being confident that show up and never go away. Lastly, we have to learn an approach to break out of those 6 forces, know when they're holding us back, and change our mindset around a set of strengths and superpowers. And I'd love to double click on what the strengths and superpowers are that we've identified. Hopefully that makes sense for you, Greg, in terms of some of the ways in which we think about confidence. And really, this is so much about how you see yourself and not about how others see you. And I think that's the real mindset shift. A lot of people have told me, I've known you since you were 25 years old, and I'm going to call BS on this origin story that you did not have gravitas. I thought you were very confident. And I always say, I was faking it. I was faking it. I can certainly be outspoken and speak up, but I was insecure, overachieving, and I did not have that unshakable belief in myself. That's the real thing that I think 24 years of being in corporate America and running my own business has given me the insight of it is not about how others see you. It is about how you see yourself first, and then it can have an outward expression. It's like the iceberg model of consciousness. Only 10% of the iceberg is visible above the waterline. It's behavior. It's what we can see. It's a speech we can deliver. But 90% of the iceberg is below the waterline. It's thoughts, values, feelings, wants, and needs. In order to get the best chance of that 10% above the waterline being strong, powerful, capable, that 90% below the waterline, which is your mindset, really has to be engaged and be the strongest version of itself.
In terms of your redefinition of confidence, you're looking at the science of confidence, right? Your book is based on many, many interviews that you've done. I'm wondering, how is understanding these types, how can this empower individuals in their personal and professional lives?
I am not an academic, but what we did in the course of building out our work is I coaxed my former boss from McKinsey, who ran Global Consumer Insights, out of retirement to run a quantitative and qualitative study on confidence for us during the pandemic. So there is real quantitative research on which we based a lot of the work we did, coupled with hundreds and hundreds of hours in dressing rooms and thousands of hours in boardrooms and interviews and whatnot. And what we've really done is, in the course of putting all this work together, we've said, look, you don't need another book about confidence. If I'm being really bold with you, there are thousands of books on confidence. There's so much ink that has been spilled. And I said, the only reason this book should exist, and I think it will make a difference for others, is if two things are true. The first, that we redefine what it means. And that's really what we just spoke about, Greg. And then secondly, we lay out concrete steps and tools for people to enact our approach in their lives. And so I'll give you a couple of examples of the practical ways you can do this. I do an exercise on stage with audiences where I say, okay, if you believe that there are 6 forces that hold you back, I want you to pinpoint which 2 hold you back the most often, because you can't solve a problem until you've diagnosed it, and you can't diagnose that limiting belief until you have a vocabulary for it. And a lot of folks will say, oh, wow, that's 6 forces work. That is so powerful, because now I know why I say sorry all the time when I'm not even sorry. It's because I have shrinking effect. I underestimate myself. I think I am less than others. And so that's one tool that I always say, use that when you feel insecurity and fear and you feel your inner critic at the table. It allows you to face down the worst case scenario. And then the other tool I love, where you can think about the best case scenario, and I love that you took the quiz, Greg, is we developed a quiz, myconfidencelanguage.com, that is part of the book, where we can help people take an inventory of their talents and strengths. By the way, this quiz is not a personality test. It is an inventory of your talents, because you cannot give what you do not know you have. So the foundation of a confident mindset is being able to understand, hey, of the superpowers in the world, which ones do I already have? And can I start to trust in them and not doubt myself and not under leverage myself? And so through the quantitative work, the second most powerful tool in this book is we created 8 superpowers. Every one of us has at least one. Most people have 2 or 3. My mom, who is my role model, she has all 8. She's like, I take your quiz, I have all 8, which is true. 2% of people do have all 8.
Of course.
It's not like Pokemon. You don't need to collect them all. I only have 4.5 of them. My team has the other 4, thank goodness. But it really gives you the language through which you can see the best version of yourself. And with that mindset in mind, then behave differently, take action. You know, I think about the phrase ready, set, fire. So much of the time we're just jumping straight to fire, fire, fire. And what we've done in this book and our work is we've said, look, 2/3 of the work is actually ready and set. The last third around fire will come so much more easily if the first 2 fundamentals are in place.
Wow. I know when I took the quiz, there were 56 questions, and on a number of them, I had to really stop and really think. And when I saw the results afterwards, it's like, hey, I didn't really know that I had that type of talent. And what I find interesting is that if you go through that quiz and you do have some doubts, then you can find one of the ways that you can identify your 6 forces. That actually gives you that starting point. That actually helps you be ready, set. Then you could fire.
And what I love, Greg, is before we started the session, you actually said, I credit Toastmasters with helping me develop some of those superpowers. So what I really love is I take the quiz every 6 months, FYI, because that's why I call it an inventory, not a personality test. You can actually start to take control of which superpowers you want. And so when I started this journey, I had 3 superpowers. I now have 4.5. but I can then pinpoint, hey, I want more of this one. What's quite interesting is and we should go through the 8, Greg. Let's go through the 8 so that your listeners are like, ooh, I'm not going to breadcrumb them. I do hope they buy the book, but I will actually give you the 8 because I think 2 of them in particular are natural homes for what Toastmasters does. And it's the 2 that the lowest frequency of people have in America. Is it okay if I jump in and share with you the 8, Greg?
Sure.
Okay. The 8 superpowers are the first 2 are leading and performing. Leading, I'm in charge, I set direction, I inspire vision and followership. Performing, it's what we're doing today. Extroversion, charisma, the exchange of energy between people, standing on a stage and loving the spotlight. These 2 are the most often written about and talked about when it comes to confidence. They represent less than 20% of America. And I think that's why 80% of us have been made to feel bad our entire lives. Achieving and knowing are the next 2. Achieving, I have a winner's mindset. I get things done. I meet or exceed metrics. If you set a goal, I will keep going. Even if I fail, I will get back up and try again. Practice makes perfect. And then knowing, I'm smart, I'm thoughtful, I'm process oriented. You want to build IKEA furniture with someone who has knowing as a superpower. The best example of these 2 superpowers are the 3 Black women from the movie Hidden Figures. How do 3 Black women have the gravitas to be at NASA in the 60s and 70s? Well, they were the smartest, highest achieving people to do all the work to get a man into space. The next 2 are giving and believing. Giving is I'm empathetic, I nurture relationships, I care about others. Believing, if you're a Ted Lasso fan, you understand the believing superpower. It's about optimism, seeing the best in everyone and every situation. And one of my favorite Ted Lasso moments in season 1 is he says, I have been underestimated my entire life because I am not a commander coach. I don't order people around. In fact, I'm not here to win or lose. I'm here to help everyone be the best versions of themselves. And you see by the 3rd season, the final season, everyone has bought into believing as a route to confidence, to success. The next 2 are creating and self-sustaining. Creating is actually my top superpower. A lot of daughters of immigrants have this because we create something from nothing. We will ideas into existence. We can see things before other people see them and believe in them. And then self-sustaining. Self-sustaining is actually one of the hardest for people to get. And what we find is people over the age of 50 tend to have it the most. And it's, I like myself. I don't need to impress you. If I experience an objection or a criticism, I don't spiral because I like myself. And it's the quality most needed to ask for a favor or a raise because it allows you to communicate your market value and know your market value. You can say, look, I'm okay if you say no. If you don't want to give me the raise, someone else will. This is my market value. This is what I'm worth. And so together, these 8 superpowers form the basis of helping people understand, hey, what is my mindset? Why should I believe in myself? And when I took the quiz the first time around, my top 3 superpowers are creating, performing, and leading. And anyone who knows me knows that those are the things that give me joy, right? Coming up with new ideas, willing them into existence, frankly, pivoting my fashion company to make face masks and hospital gowns during the pandemic because no one was buying clothing. That is that superpower in action. Performing, being outspoken, having practiced being a public speaker since the age of 12, and then leading, which I love to rally the troops, set direction, put great talents together. I will tell you, my team has the opposite set of superpowers. They really over-index on achieving, knowing, giving, believing, and I celebrate that. In fact, many of my teammates would be labeled as introverted, and I love introverts. I think they are smarter, more powerful, more thoughtful than me, who I'm an extroverted personality. And so it's really fun because one of my team members said, this is the first place I've worked where being an introvert is seen as valuable. I said, of course it is. And they always go, well, that is the first time I've ever felt really good about myself at work, because you recognize the unique superpowers I bring to the table. You know, when I think about your question around advancing your life personally and professionally, this is really the antidote to the inner critic, is being able to articulate, believe, see what your unique strengths are that you bring to the table. And then more importantly, take control of the journey of which ones you want in the future. So we find that as people climb the corporate ladder or progress through life, they go on average from having 2 superpowers to 4 or more. So Greg, I'm not surprised you have 6. And it's because we're collecting skills and experiences. Every time someone comes to me and shows me their results, they're like, wow, I'm achieving, I'm giving, I'm knowing, I get everything done, I take care of others. But Lisa, I really want to speak up more in meetings. Or I'm like, so now you know you want to add the performing or the leading superpower to your portfolio. You should go join Toastmasters. If that's a skill you really want to master, which less than 20% of America has, go and invest in yourself. And now you know the word for what you're trying to cultivate.
Definitely. Before Toastmasters, I'm sure I probably only had maybe 2, if that's superpowers. Talking about Toastmasters, perfect tie-in. It was because of your father you discovered Toastmasters. And what were the circumstances and what impact did it have on you?
I was a freshman in high school at 12 years old. I skipped 2 grades. My mom was a Tiger mom before Tiger moms were a thing. When Amy Chua's book came out, she was like, you'll see, I was right. Someone write New York Times bestselling book all about me, about Tiger Mom. So I was 12 years old when I started as a freshman in high school. And my parents owned the local Chinese restaurant in town. I grew up in a very small desert town in Southern California. And my parents realized in 1992 they could not afford an Ivy League education, which at the time I ended up at Yale. Yale was $28,000 a year to go. And so my dad started asking around town saying, hey, I've got to make some extra money for my kid. And one of the Rotary Club members and then another Lions Club member said, hey, we have these student competitions. There's local prizes, regional prizes, national prizes. Do you think your daughter could be a public speaker? Could she win some of these speaking competitions that we host? And so my dad said, I think so. And if you remember in the 90s, I don't know how much the prize money is now, but it was $5,000, $10,000. In one case, it was $15,000 if you were the national winner. And my dad said, okay, let's go learn how to be public speakers. Now, my parents are immigrants from Taiwan. So English is not their first language, right? This is not the makings of being a speaking coach if English is not your first language. One of the Rotary Club members said, hey, I'm a Toastmaster. We have meetings every Tuesday morning at the local Sizzler. Why don't you come and observe what we do? And what was great is these gentlemen basically adopted me. I couldn't be an official member of the chapter or the club. They just let me listen in. They let me actually do table topics. When I was getting ready for my speaking competitions, they'd let me come rehearse at their meeting and they'd give me feedback. So I always say that I was an unofficial member of the Fontana, California chapter for that reason. One of the members gave me Dale Carnegie's book, How to Win Friends and Influence Others. And that changed my life, right? So if you think about the daughter of Taiwanese immigrants having to operate in Western society, speak in speaking competitions to earn money to pay for her first year at Yale, it was a really unique dynamic. And Toastmasters, I always say, changed my life for that reason. I would have never been able to operate in Western culture without it.
Wow. It's funny you're saying this because last week I interviewed a gentleman who brought his 6-year-old daughter and she did table topics and won her little ribbon. I thought that was interesting.
Well, you know what? If you believe in my whole approach of we're born fully self-confident, I bet that 6-year-old, if we were to measure confidence, was the most confident person in the meeting.
Yeah, she did really, really, really well. And she was so proud because, of course, her eyes were on the prize, the ribbon. That was the big thing. Yeah, I just recorded that last week and it'll actually air. It'll go live just prior to this one. So,
Oh, great.
Toastmasters connection. So considering your history with the organization, how does it feel to receive this prestigious Golden Gavel Award?
Well, talk about a full circle moment. It was really lovely. Dennis Olson in the organization reached out to me on LinkedIn, and I had given an interview for a PBS show and talked about how Toastmasters changed my life. And he said, "Hey, we'd love to do a call with you and just talk to you." And when they told me that I was receiving the Golden Gavel, I was floored. I was absolutely shocked and so humbled by it. It was funny. I have not at that point been to a Toastmasters meeting in 30 years. The team at Toastmasters arranged for me to go and join a meeting in New York City near where I live. And it was on a Monday night. It is amazing to come home to Toastmasters. I love that there are some things that you can really count on. I got to do table topics. I did win the ribbon, Greg. I feel like if I didn't, that would be a problem. But I did get to win a ribbon. And it was just one of those moments where you're just like, oh, it's so nice to be amongst the people who really were so formative to my childhood and so formative to the person I am.
Oh, that's wonderful. In addition to receiving your award at the Golden Gavel ceremonies at the convention, you'll also be enlightening us with a presentation entitled Cultivating Courage, Reframe Results to Compel Action. Can you tell us a little bit about what Cultivating Courage is and what can we expect to hear from your presentation?
So my definition for courage is, or my formula for courage is self-belief that leads us to take action in our lives, and then evaluating the results of those actions from a place of strength to learn, not to regret or beat ourselves up so we can do it all over again. And I think what most of us go through is we replace self-belief with self-doubt or our inner critic. And so we can't take action. We actually are paralyzed, or we default to our comfort zones because it's safe. So it's more around how do we ignite that first step that most of us have defaulted to our inner critic when we feel the need to take action, and how do we replace it with a true authentic form of self-belief. And then on the other side, after we've taken the action, how do we look at results and how do we look at what the outcomes of those actions were in a way that we get stronger? One of my favorite things that I always like to say is life doesn't get easier, we get stronger. And so what ends up happening is when we experience what could be determined as a setback, or some people call it a failure, it freezes us in place, versus what I like to say is if you stare that down and you say, what did I learn? How did this setback make me stronger? It allows us to change the way in which we define courage in our own lives and how much action we take. So I'll be decomposing my formula for courage during that session.
Wow. And folks, if you want to hear Lisa's presentation, you can hear it live or live streamed. It'll be Friday, August the 16th at 1:30 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time, or Universal Coordinated Time -7. And if you've enjoyed this episode as much as I have, I encourage you to share it with your friends and family. You can find the Toastmasters podcast at toastmasterspodcast.com, toastmasters.org, Apple, Spotify, and anywhere you get your podcasts. Lisa, if people would like to find out more about you, about Gravitas, about your book, how can they go about doing that?
Absolutely. You can find me on LinkedIn, Lisa Sun Gravitas. Just type in the search bar and message me, connect with me. I'm very good on LinkedIn. In terms of finding out more about our book is Gravitas, the 8 Strengths That Redefine Confidence. It's anywhere books are sold. And you can take the quiz at myconfidencelanguage.com.
And I'll definitely have to take the quiz a few months down the road. I didn't realize it was something that you could actually keep doing again.
That's what makes it so fun. And I will close out with one quick story, Greg, which is I had a woman write me a message on LinkedIn last Thanksgiving. And she said, instead of asking my family what they were grateful for, I asked them what their superpowers were. And we all took the quiz together over Thanksgiving dinner. And she said, we realized she has 2 sons. And she said, we realized we've been taking away our younger son's power his entire life. My older son, his 3 superpowers were leading, performing, and achieving. makes sense. He's the captain of everything. He's always life of the party. Our younger son is giving, knowing, and believing. He loves to read. He's really thoughtful, but he's much quieter. And he said we would go to parties and I would say, don't talk to my younger son. He hates people. He's just going to sit in the corner. He hates people. And she said, when I talked to him, she drove him back to the airport to go back to college after Thanksgiving break. And she said, when I talked to him, I asked him, have we made you feel bad? And he goes, yeah, I'm away from all you people, but of course. You could have told people I just finished a book on pandas and I was the world's leading authority on pandas that week. And I love to talk to people one-on-one. I was made to feel really bad most of my life growing up. When I talk about this quiz, I get really emotional about it because it isn't just about you taking it. I do think it's fun to take it every 6 to 12 months, Greg, because to your point, I both talked about the one quality you saw as an opportunity. That's mine too, Greg, FYI. And when I say I started with 3 and I have 4.5, I'm actually trying to build that quality. I don't want to reveal your confidences, but the half a point, the half superpower is the one that I'm really working on for myself. That's one way to think about the quiz. But the other way to think about the quiz is what a fun way to connect with your loved ones, your colleagues, just learning what each other's superpowers are. It creates a basis of connection much deeper than demography or living in the same place.
Yeah. I think it would be a fun exercise to do at a Toastmasters meeting is have ahead of time, let people know about it, then have them do the quiz and then come back and talk about it the following week.
Well, from your lips to the Toastmasters' ears. Thank you, Greg.
Lisa, this has been an absolute pleasure. And folks, please also check out the cover story in the May 2024 issue of the Toastmaster magazine entitled Lisa's Son Redefines Confidence. The 2024 Gavel recipient has gone from lacking gravitas to owning it. Lisa, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me. And I totally look forward to hearing your presentation.
Thank you so much, Greg.
Wonderful.
Yay, we did it. That was so fun. Thank you.
Ever imagined a book written just for you? Introducing Books.ai. We're not just another bookstore, we're the future of reading. Our state-of-the-art AI adapts each book to your specific needs, creating a personalized masterpiece. Visit Books.ai now, that's POOKS.ai, and use the promotion code SPOTIFY for a whopping 50% off. Books.ai, your personalized book awaits.